tears. I've seen happy tears so many times, and that just it just warms your heart when you like I was a part of that person's life to make um make this happen, this vision, so it's just cool.
I hope you're comfortable enough to share if you were part of the crying crew. I don't know if this is
No,
a
I didn't cry. I didn't cry. Well, it's so funny. No, I'm not a crier. Um, but I will say when I did finished the first full draft of my first feature, that was like the moment that I was like, man, I could do this. That wasn't a moment. I did cry then. So me and the director, it was so funny. We didn't cry like in front of each other. We were definitely emotional when we got to we finally finished doing the last scene. And this is just the first full pass. And we didn't cry in front of each other, but when we left, we ended up crying later on. So it was kind of funny. But yeah, that was definitely emotional just because it was our first, So both of us, it was the first for both of us. So
And so your first feature is now being screened on All Black.
yes,
And
yes.
do you feel like moving physically to LA accelerated your career? And if so, why? Hello, and welcome to another edition of your On Your Own panel. This week, I wanted to talk a little bit about what happens behind the scenes. And of course, I'm going to get with the professionals who are in the mix. And our next guest is Mr. Sean B. Simmons. If you've watched Staycation or How I Met Your Father, or anything from the Fresh Prince reunion to Pause with Sam J, you've seen his work, right? He's been putting in the work and working not only on developing his skills, but expanding his area of specialty. There is a special level of patience that it takes to be an editor. And I know that because Sean was my editor on my first documentary film entitled "And the Diaspora." So welcome to the On Your Own panel, Sean.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
And we want to leave as many gems obvious and hidden for the people who tune in, right? So I like to start off light, and as we watch the panels, we know that it's all about sharing as much information as possible in the time that we share.
Mm-hmm.
So I find that having worked both in front and behind the camera, that there's easily measurable drama behind the camera as much as in front. And so I know that these relationships are dynamic, and we're always really trying to make sure that we're doing our job, but also doing the best job that's possible.
Mm-hmm.
So when you are going through the editing process, I find that the best editors are able to, go over their technical details and make sure those are set, but also able to give feedback and to share with the client, the producers, the writers, what their professional opinion is on something. So how do you decide when you're on an editing gig, when to take the notes and implement them and to just go forward with what you've been told to do, and when to maybe give a little pushback and to share, from your perspective as a professional, from your artistic view, that something else might work better for the edit to honor the script and honor the vision?
Yeah, so that's always a fine balance. Anytime you're in the edit, you're in the post-production, especially when you're working with the producers and the directors, and sometimes that may be more than one person. Just depends on the actual show or project. It's finding that balance, kind of learning how to read the room, and there's times and place where you give your opinion, and then there's times and place when you just like, okay, this is just kind of what it has to be for X reason. And sometimes what I've learned that is I typically will give my opinion, especially, being an editor, that's what they're asking you to do, your opinion, even though they may give me a template. I will give my opinion, but you always want to make sure you give them what they want first. And then you show them, hey, here's another idea that I came up with. tell me what you think about this. So always give them what they want first and then give your ideas. Usually, especially usually I have more of a larger input. I won't say larger, but you definitely have an input definitely when something that they originally planned is not working. Because either something happened on set or location or an actor or even maybe a technical error. They like, hey, because of this error, we have to do it this way to get around it. So that's what I would say to that question. But it's always but that just comes with experience.
So it sounds like you're reading the room and you're doing, like you said, you're doing what you're being asked, and then also offering as an option, another way to go about reaching the goal, the shared goal of a good product to put out.
Yeah, and obviously, like if it's a first-time client, more often than not, I will. Obviously, you're always gonna give them what they want. But sometimes I won't share an option. But it just depends on who you're working with. Like if I have a long history with this person, then sometimes I can say things to them and they'll be more receptive. But if it's somebody that I just started working with, depending on the temperature of that person or people that you're working with, that may not be as open. It may be like, no, this is just a cookie cutter, just do it like this. So it just depends. But yeah, you're absolutely, yeah.
So it sounds like you're using your emotional intelligence on top of the technical skills. And we know so much of work is meshing the professional skill set with the personal skill set, right? The personality,
right.
the ability to work with different personalities, sometimes different power levels, different egos even. What do you find is the most common disconnect between editors and the producer's vision for people who haven't had the stack of credits that you have yet, but they want to try to fine tune and prepare for some of these things in the work environment? Because we know editing can go really, really quickly and intensely, and they need it kind of upon request.
Right. I would say the biggest disconnect sometimes is usually it's because a lot of times the editor is not always on set, always present when it happens. So a lot of times when an editor is looking at the footage, they're seeing it for the first time. And so they may form a different opinion based on what they're seeing. Whereas a producer who was maybe on set, a producer or a director who was on set, more so the producers and directors, especially if they weren't there for every single shot, sometimes what they felt like is there may not actually be there because either they said, okay, it was scripted like this and we planned the shot like this. But sometimes when you're looking at something, when you're looking at a scene versus looking at a monitor, and seeing what's actually there can be a disconnect there because they think something happened this way. And the editor is like, well, no, it didn't happen this way. Like, oh, I know we shot it, but they shot it, but they shot it like this versus how maybe wherever they were standing. So usually for the larger productions, you don't see too much of that as far as disconnect because the producer's usually always behind a monitor just because of the budget that they have enough monitors for like 3 or 4 people to look at the same time. But usually I find that sometimes on smaller or startups, the producer may or may not always know to view that, especially if they're going to be some of the final decision makers. So it just depends, but that's usually the largest, like what actually happened versus what we're actually seeing. I will say another thing, probably the bigger thing is how much time something can actually take, because the producers sometimes think, oh, this one change, it just should be simple to make this one change. Well, they may not know they don't always know what it took to make this a sequence of shots to look this way. And because they don't know what it took to get there, them making that one change may cause like a domino effect. Like, oh, I got to go back and rebuild this whole section because that one change affects so many shots. So that's be the probably the biggest thing is just the timing and how long something could have. A small note may not actually be a small note.
So how do you communicate that? Because people are coming to you really, really hurried, and they're telling you, get us to us. We're paying you great money. Just do what we're asking you. Why is it taking so long? Like, it gives me kind of a flashback I had one time where I was at this coffee shop and someone was asking, how many people does it take to make one cup of coffee? And I was like, if they give you just the grains and the hot water stirred up in a cup, you're going to be upset, right? You want it to go through the proper process so you can like the final product.
You know, I will say this: good producers or experienced producers will more often than not allot the time to make necessary changes and time to review notes for the editor, because they understand that editing is as a process, and sometimes swapping shots is easier said than done. So they allot that time. Obviously, there are times when things are in crunch time, but and that's when you really kind of have to trust your editor to make the best decisions, especially if they're under crunch and they're just trying to get something done. But you know, I would always urge any producer, make sure there's time to get something done. That is primarily their job, is to make sure it gets done in a certain amount of time. You know, editor obviously has to cut things so that there is time, but if the editors are not necessarily building out the schedule, that is on the job of the producers too. So you always want to be in that position. But if you're not, obviously, when I'm in those situations and the producer just wants something the way they want it and there's not enough time to really go back, you just kind of have to give them what they want, and then that's it. You know, because that it at the end of the day, this is what the job requires. So I always try to work with people who are a little bit more experienced at this point, or at least understand that this isn't a cookie cutter type of thing, especially if it's like more creative, like a film work or something like that. Corporate stuff, social stuff, that can be more cookie cutter depending on what it is. But anything involving TV, film, stuff like that, documentary especially, those aren't straight up cookie cutters. Those have a process. They need time and to massage to make everything flow properly.
In that case, you said the more experienced you become, of course, you appreciate that you need to be partnered with more experienced producers to just be able to do better work. But tell us about your start, because you moved here to LA and
I did,
started working here, but you've been editing long before that. So
yes,
we want to share a bit of the HBCU from your hometown. What's your hometown?
Well, my hometown is Houston, but my HBCU, Houston, Texas, that's my hometown. But my HBCU, Morgan State University, class of 2009, Baltimore, Maryland. Yep. Yeah. So that's, yeah. Oh man. Yeah. It started, but you know, if I'm being completely honest, that was where I started to realize, hey, this could actually be a career. Because it wasn't at Morgan was when I realized this could actually be a career. This is something I'm actually really good at. And it doesn't feel like, and I didn't have to write tons and tons of papers like all my sociology majors, write tons of papers, psychology majors. That was crazy. Like, I don't have to write papers, I just do projects. And I just rather do a project than write a 6-page paper every single assignment.
So then did you study media and film, or did you kind of have a mix where you had the interest in film and studied something else?
No, I studied media in college. I did not study film per se. That came later. The film study came later, and that was more self-study at that point. Because there is a difference between like a video production and a film production. They aren't the same thing. They may use some of the same equipment, but those are two different thought processes. So video production is where I started, and I started actually in post. I started actually editing before I was actually shooting anything, believe it or not. So I kind of started working backwards. And then once I graduated from college and I started to really, my skills started to develop, that's when I started getting more into film. But well, sink my teeth into and get my feet wet and just, hey, you can do this, just put in effort and you can do it.
So you said you were self-studying film and you had this idea of committing to and completing projects. What is the most rewarding part of the work that you do?
For me as an editor, it's the easiest. For me, it's seeing the vision come to life, because with any edit, you're pretty much starting from scratch. You're looking at the footage, you're seeing what was shot, you have a script in front of you, and just seeing that it's cool when you see that person like vision come to life by something you did. That's a pretty cool feeling. When, especially if it's like a first-time director or a first-time producer, it's like the joy that is generally felt by all the people involved in the project. Like I worked on a project recently, earlier this year, that's still doing a festival run right now. Actually, it did win 2 awards for one overseas, 2 awards overseas, so it's doing pretty well. And it's just, I was in the screening, a virtual screening, and just to see the look on everybody's faces when it was done was just amazing. From the actors to the producers and everyone else involved, it was just amazing. That's what I look forward to the most. So
there's a huge emotional value added when you finish something in a collective fashion, right? Like
yeah.
you have a whole team.
Definitely. Some people cry, some people, it's just over the like happy tears. I've seen happy tears so many times, and that it just warms your heart when you, like, I was a part of that person's life to make make this happen, this vision, so it's just cool.
I hope you're comfortable enough to share if you were part of the crying crew. I don't know if this is.
No, I didn't cry. Well, it's so funny. No, I'm not a crier. But I will say, when I did finished the first full draft of my first feature, that was like the moment that I was like, man, I could do this. That wasn't a moment. I did cry then on the first full draft, because it was me and the director's first full feature together. So it was
What's
kind
the
of
name of the film?
Forgive and Forget. Forgive and Forget. Yeah. So me and the director, it was so funny. We didn't cry like in front of each other. We were definitely emotional when we got to we finally finished doing the last scene. And this is just the first full pass. And we didn't cry in front of each other, but when we left, we ended up crying later on. So it was kind of funny. But yeah, that was definitely emotional, just because it was our first, so both of us, it was the first for both of us. So.
And so your first feature is now being screened on All Black, and
yes.
I took a look, and you can access that on Amazon. So we're gonna see, what moved you so deeply. We can all take a moment to go take a look. Do you feel like moving physically to LA accelerated your career, and if so, why?
Definitely. It was, moving to LA for me was the best decision I could have made for myself career-wise. And it's not that you can't create films everywhere. And it's not to say you can't do it, because I was doing it obviously before I came to LA. The difference is the quality of projects that you get consistently is much higher. The people who are passionate about it, it's more so here than, like, I would say anywhere else. Only competing with maybe New York, Atlanta, and maybe a couple of places overseas, obviously. But in LA, this is a film town. This is a freelance film career. I came out here because I'm passionate about this. So you have a lot of that. And because of that, I'm working with people who are deeply knowledgeable about what they do specifically. and what they bring to the table. So you have a lot of that. But LA was that moving out here tremendously. I've grown so much. I grew so much in just the first year, and I've been out here now for what, 3 going on 4 years now. And it's just, I have grown so much as far as what I know, new workflows, people I've met, friends, you know, like back home, I was maybe one out of like 20 people that actually knew anything about video production, right? Where now it's like I have a whole uh group or list of friends that know exactly what I'm talking about, and I don't have to try to like dumb down my conversations or translate to where they can understand it. Because if you're not in it, you're just not going to understand. So there's a big difference.
And then I can definitely say it helps to have people who understand the opportunity cost, right?
Mm-hmm.
Studying media, you can easily be at maybe a new studio or something along those lines that seems to be in line with what you studied.
Yes.
And a more direct application of your degree.
Mm-hmm.
But you're HBCU made, so Morgan State prepared you for life.
they did. It I will say Morgan State helped prepare me more for definitely prepared me more being out here in LA. Because when I went back home, I took a little different path for a little while, and then got back into production. And then, but like those skills aren't like, oh, Morgan didn't prepare me. Like, no, just because they didn't have a film program, we still learned a lot. And now my foundational elements came from Morgan. It's just being out here in LA, it has allowed me to apply those things more than being in Houston, where I'm from. So
then let's change gears a little bit.
mm-hmm.
I think that we go really, really hard as professionals in LA because it tends to be the sentiment that you're only as good as your last project. And as soon as you finish something, people are like, so what's next? And I like to infuse an attempt at balance. I don't think it's always the status, but I think it's good to try. Yeah. So as you're going hard and you're putting in work, how are you taking care of yourself, your body, your mind? Mm-hmm. And I said that because, we look at your video blogs and you're talking about your recommitment to your physical health. And we know that working hard is nothing new to you. Right. So how do you approach balance?
You know what? It is an ongoing thing, because I feel like there's never truly any balance. There's never any true work-life balance. I think the work as what people think of it, like, oh, my life is just completely balanced. There's days when you're going to have to work longer than you need to, but then the times the rest, you need to rest. And you have to understand, like, okay, like for instance, I know that I'm going to have next 2 days are going to be really long days, right? So I need to be dialed in. But then I also know that, okay, I need to make sure I'm getting proper nutrition, proper rest, so that I can do those long days. So it's a balancing act, I would say, not just complete balance. Because the thing about this time is when nothing's happening. But when something does happen, they want you to take off right then. So you have to, like, when you have time to relax or treat yourself to things, do it. Because when something comes up, you got to be able to move, especially if you want to grow and get to these things that you want to get to, or accomplish these goals, So that's the thing. I don't feel like there's any real true balance. It's just being able to identify areas understanding where you are in your life, what you need to do to be healthy, and then operate in that, and just know that, okay, hey, there's some days I got to be more work heavy. And other days, definitely rest and reset. In between that, make sure you eat right, make sure you're sleeping properly. Because obviously if you don't rest, you're not going to be good either way. Nothing's going to go right, whether you try to work out, eat right, or do any kind of real work on set. If you're not getting rest, all that goes out the window. Doesn't matter.
So we're rallying for rest, and I can
Rest.
absolutely attest that rest is best.
Yes. It's more important. Proper rest is more important than actually going to the gym or working out or even eating right. Rest is more important than all that because that is your body's chance to reset. And that's one thing I've always tried to do is like, okay, I'm getting older now. I can't sleep for 5 hours and then run another 10-hour day. I can't do that anymore. So now it's like my body's changed. So I said, okay, if I want to be functional the next day, I'd rather go to sleep. Like I'd rather go to sleep and wake up early to finish a project than stay up all night. That is, that is my philosophy because I'm like, if I'm tired, get some rest because you don't know how many nights I've tried to stay up late and work on something and I'm making edits in my sleep and then wake up trying to figure out what happened to my cut. So like I'm pressing buttons and I wake up and like, what just happened?
Who did this?
Who did this? And I got to go back and try to figure out where I was. And thank goodness for undo. But yeah, so rest. I would say, yeah, to summarize, rest is the most important out of anything. Just making sure you're getting your rest, even on busy days. Make sure you get midday naps. If you need to take it. No shame.
Took a nap just before this.
Yeah.
So you're telling me even in the midst of your most heavy editing jobs, you make time. You're able to make time and prioritize rest.
You have to.
And I want you to
absolutely have. It is not a and it's non-negotiable. It's
like
more
an
important
option.
than anything.
Yeah. I think grind culture pushes a lot on us to always seem busy and always be engaged.
Right.
Always be on the scene or appear that you're on the scene or hustling to or from another industry event. And it's really a formula for burnout.
Yeah. And I say, when I say rest, I'm not even talking about just sleep. I'm just like taking a minute to step back and let your mind reset. That can be even going for like, I'm just going to go outside and just walk around for a little bit. You can't be in work mode all the time because you'll burn out. You'll start being angry at every little thing. You'll start getting emotional. You'll start making irrational decisions. And then it bleeds into every other aspect of your life. So rest is so essential. Like and the thing is, it's without proper rest, your stress levels go up. And then when everyone knows when your stress level goes up, that leads to all kinds of medical issues. So,
and we know in the Black community, hypertension, hyperglycemia, and the management of it with, the malfunction of our insulin production and insulin absorption ability, like diabetes, heart disease, all of it, I think, is informed at least in part by the environment, right? And stress is such a critical factor. So we're not just saying to stress less, but we're saying to try to create the environment where you can decompress and like get away from that immediate source.
Yeah. Like I said, it doesn't have to be, we saying rest, go to sleep. It could just be like, I'm just going to get up and step away from my computer for a minute. Go look out the window. Go watch a TikTok video. Go just separate your mind for something. You don't understand how many times, like, I went around the corner one time and I was trying to figure out how to get around this edit. And I was sitting at the desk and I was struggling with it. And I got away from it. And then while I was out walking around, it came to me how to get around this edit to make the edit work. That's simple. You just get away from sometimes it's like that break from technology that you need. So, yeah.
And to your point, that interruption kind of lets you come back with a clear eye. And just health experts talk about all the different types of rest, which for me, I kind of had the physical and the mental clear, but they're adding more to the spiritual rest,
yes,
emotional rest, creative rest, because you're using certain faculties when you're creating, like you said, and you just go for a walk, you're not immediately engaging the same pieces of your brain that you would use, and the solution comes because you're not fatiguing like the same parts of your brain that you've been
Right.
staring at something with.
Right.
There's social rest, mental rest, right?
Mhm.
Like your problem solving areas, so your physical rest.
Yeah.
All of these are kind of the options that you have to make sure that you're engaging with so that you can be the best producers. Kind of like the professional athletes have all these professionals around nutrition, around
Mhm.
exercise, around rest, around flexibility, around
Mhm.
mindfulness, mindset, right? They have a whole team of people who address what we can now label as these different forms of
Right.
rest and development, right? They're making sure that you're balanced. They're making sure that you're not emotionally at one end of the spectrum, because you can't perform if you're off balance in these ways.
Mhm.
And so I'm glad that you bring up just kind of even these smaller things that we can do in our day-to-day lives. And I promise you, anyone in your life who wants you to work for them and wants you to work with them, and especially your family members, they want you to rest. Even if they are demanding and would rather that you do all these other social things or immediately urgent things, they will love you more at your rested self. Like, rest is the best.
Yes.
So
Yes.
then,
Yeah.
as we get towards the end of our panel, I really want you to kind of share just some of the things that kept you going when you thought that you hit a wall. Because I think a lot of people wait until they have the Oscar in hand to really kind of
Mhm.
start unpacking some of the effort. And I want to give people that push to know that just because we look like we're seamlessly gliding along with service, they call it the duck syndrome, doesn't mean like we're not paddling beneath the surface to just stay afloat, to stay motivated. So what,
Right.
if you can share, has kept you in the game when you felt like you were knocked out of it?
Uh, I will say this. Definitely my faith. Um my faith and faith in God, and just what I believe personally that He has store for my life. Just knowing that with Him I can't fail no matter what, or no matter how it looks. And with that, and because of that, it gives me um I don't want to say like supreme confidence, but it just allows me to push through any doubt that I might have, either in myself, my abilities, uh, uh, problem solving, you know, things like that. It allows me to just, and just the ability to be like, the scripture talks about the battle is not yours, it's the Lord's, and then just understanding that I don't have to try to win everything, you know, and being able to walk in that kind of peace, and understanding like this project may not be for me, and that's okay. This project or I may not be ready for this project, or I may not be the editor for everyone, and understanding that's okay, but understand that I'm the editor for somebody, you know, and as long as I stay keep my mind focused on what is important, everything else will just fall into place. And then a lot of, like I said, it's just a lot of prayer and people praying for me. For the longest time, my mother was just a pillar in my life before she passed. And then she stayed on her knees praying for me, and I wouldn't be here where I am today without that. And then every problem I had, you just learn to pray through it, and then once you pray through it, believe that you're gonna get through it, and then don't look back. So
Don't look back. It's like
right.
the movie where if you glance over, you'll turn into sand. But more
Mhm.
more seriously, you can become stagnant, right? Because you're looking at all
Right.
the missed opportunities, and in that you're missing new opportunities. So I absolutely
Right.
understand And when I used to play volleyball during like junior high, parts of high school, they call it like when a ball is out of play and the previous play is finished, it's a dead ball, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the play is dead. And if you're trying to bring life out of something that's already gone, rework or replan something, or ruminating on stuff that already took place, already had the conclusions, already had the consequences. You can only take lessons. You can't take new life out of old actions and old events, right? So being able to know what's for you, you're gonna make it for you, and it's not gonna be, I think, too restrictive and definitely not intrusive on your peace. I think there's a separation between ambition and your ability to work hard, and just complete destroying your person and your personality to try to fit a mold that's not for you.
Right. I can't be someone I'm not, nor should I try to be someone I'm not. I need to be the best version of me. And that's it. It's like, take me as I am, and not to sound cliche, but that's just, you just have to get to that point and be comfortable in your own skin. And if you don't know something, go find information, look it up or ask questions. You just have to learn how to not let, everyone has a certain level of fear or doubt that's residing. So you can't eliminate fear. It's just learning how to push through it instead of letting it hold you hostage. And that's where for me, that's why I operate my best in is, okay, in spite of how I may feel, keep pushing forward, because there is a light at the end of the tunnel, even if you may not see it yet.
Absolutely. I think, I do a dance with doubt.
Yeah.
Because if I'm being honest, before every next thing, there's a questioning of, well, okay, just because the previous thing worked doesn't mean that this one will work. Who's to say? Who knows? I don't know.
Right.
And so then I really enjoy dancing. So I try to make it something fun. I'm like, well, if you're going to be here, doubt, then we're going to do what I like to do. And then when I get through it, I like to say, like, I leave it on the dance floor. I get on with the work. I get on with moving forward. Like I you might have presented some questions that I might want to consider so I can be better prepared. Like, what if? Well, when this happens, what if? Okay. And now I have the answers to that. So thank you so much for your candor, Sean. We're looking forward to what's next. We know we're already watching your work, and we absolutely look forward to the next accomplishment.
Thank you.
Know that all of the work is worth it, because we see you and we see the products, and I think the people who do work in and around, and especially people who are trying to get into the industry, understand that it's a real task to get your resume built, and you definitely put that in. So at the start of the panel, we promised you that we're going to share as much as possible in the time we share, and ultimately we want to make sure that you know that it's always possible to own your own as you collaborate and become involved in all these projects. We want to know that you can walk away with something beyond credits, right? So how can you walk away with credentials, credits, and future income? So there are all these pieces that you put together to make a film, to make a TV show, to make a production, and to go from idea to realization. So keep clued in, keep tuned in as we share all the different roles in front and behind of the camera, and definitely continue to do your research and reading as you exercise your right to own your own. Thank you all so very much. I'm grateful